Well, happy Thanksgiving and welcome to NFL Fantasy Matchup. Jed, you're in Maryland. Tommy and I are here in Chicago. Did you guys watch any of the games last night?
Yep, watched everything. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. It was a lot of fun. A lot of football yesterday.
Yeah.
Tom. Okay, I've already started complaining. Right now, Amon-Ra St. Brown. All right, could he have caught a touchdown? Right. Oh my gosh, he got me 14 points. But I am in one of my leagues. I am just on the brink of the playoffs. I just need to win 2 more games. Amon-Ra St. Brown did me nothing. And especially with Mark Andrews, who's also my team, is out this week. Achane is out. Aaron Jones is out. I really need Amon-Ra St. Brown to do really well this week.
Well, even for me, like in that particular game, who is it? Jordan Love actually looks pretty good. I was just thinking about he would be a quarterback I would consider picking up next year, instead of maybe going after a Josh Allen. And then for me, the Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery thing is not working for me because I have Jahmyr Gibbs in so many leagues, and Montgomery scored the touchdown and had the bulk of the runs yesterday.
Oh, Montgomery was paid off for me. That was a good one. But the mistake I think I might have made in our league, I played Brock Purdy. I don't know if you guys saw that. I played him over Tua. Yeah, over Tua and Herbert because of the defenses they were playing, and he only had 11.46 points. So I don't know. That might have killed me, but we'll see. But Montgomery's actually paid out.
Yeah.
But Jim, honestly, a lot of times I would hold off on Jordan Love for now, just because he has to put together 2 or 3 good games. Because this is one game out of how many bad games recently. Christian Watson, Dobbs, all those guys did well. But let's see how they do with 2 great games.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, but look, those receivers look pretty good, right? You got Jaden Reed, you got Romeo Dobbs, you got Christian Watson. I'm actually eyeing Jordan Love right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the offense looked better than it should have yesterday because Jared Goff basically kept giving them the ball at the 20-yard line. So the Green Bay offense looked better than I think it really is. I agree with Tommy there. I would hold off on Love as far as a keeper league, or basically next year if you're drafting, you're going to be able to get Love late. You're not going to have to take him early.
And speaking of Green Bay, running back Aaron Jones, do you feel like it's an injury-prone year, it's a down year, or do you think he's way past his prime?
All of the above. I'm not drafting. I'm not taking Aaron Jones. I think Green Bay is still they're working their way, even though they're in the playoff hunt. As far as real football, they're in the mix of a playoff hunt, playoff seed, wild card seed. But as far as fantasy, no, I'm staying away from the Packers.
Yeah. So, and then yesterday when I was watching Seattle versus San Francisco, I've played Zach Charbonnet in all my leagues yesterday because he was expected to get somewhere between 12 to 14 fantasy points. He got like 6, and so I was thinking he would supplant Kenneth Walker as the running back. And right now, I mean, maybe the second game, this is like a Devin Singletary game where the first game he came in, he had to get his feet kind of get used to everything, but he did not do well yesterday. So.
Well, and they were playing the 49ers. 49ers defense is pretty darn good, and they got behind a little bit early. So I thought Chardonnay still did okay. I mean, I think he had 61 yards and 16 carries or 15 carries.
There was no touchdowns.
Yeah, no touchdowns, but the offense was hurt. Geno Smith got a little bit hurt.
Did you see he was arguing with the coach on the sidelines yesterday?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, he was arguing on the sidelines, and then Metcalf had to calm him down a little bit, but they were showing
wow. Yeah, I mean, I guess what I was going to say is I have Charbonnet in 2 leagues. I didn't play him, but I would still hold on to him. I wouldn't drop him. I think he could be a difference maker in these next couple weeks before your playoffs. That's the thing. You got to be really – I was going to say, like, setting up for these playoffs, you got to really be clear on what is your weakness going into the playoffs, and then make sure you load up on those players. So, for example, I'm worried about a quarterback in our league, so I'm holding 3 quarterbacks in that league. In other leagues where Mark Andrews, went out, I'm holding 3 tight ends because I'm trying to basically see who can play out for the playoffs. So you got to just get ready.
Yeah. And even with Seattle, a lot of times I get the sense that Tyler Lockett has now become the 3rd wide receiver, and we're beginning to see Njigba emerge as your 2nd. I wouldn't be surprised in a couple years he'll be the number 1, but Metcalf becomes your big play number 1 wide receiver at this point.
Yeah, I do like a Charbonnet. I'll tell you this: the Pete Carroll offense has always made running backs do really well. So Charbonnet 14 times for 47 yards, 4 catches for only 1 yard. But they're thinking that Kenneth Walker might be still out, and so he might still be the starting running back next week against the Cowboys as well too. Yeah.
Man,
Jim, you know
Cowboys
what?
look good though.
Oh,
Yeah.
Cowboys are good,
They
right?
looked really good.
Yeah.
And how about that cornerback with breaking I think it was Deion Sanders' record of number of touchdown run backs in a season, and he did it in 11 games. That was insane.
Jed, I was just going to say to you, a lot of times the Dallas defense carries me every week. 16 points it got me. The other week it got me 12 points. The Dallas defense really scores a lot of points for me.
Well, in 11 weeks, Bland alone had 6 touchdowns. So that means every other week he got a touchdown for the Dallas Cowboys defense. So that definitely tells you something. They must be the number one fantasy.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
defense.
they're if not them, it's San Francisco. But
Right.
I'm pretty sure San Francisco had a couple down weeks there, so my guess is they're number one. Tony Pollard, 13 rushes, 79 yards. He added another 24 yards in the air. So he scored 15 points. I was happy with Tony Pollard.
Oh, Pollard the last 2 weeks, right after we basically said I was benching him, like the last 2 weeks he had paid out, which is great. If you've held on to him this long, you want to play him now. But he's finally getting touchdowns. That's been the big thing to push him over.
And Brandon Cooks, they keep throwing it to Brandon Cooks. Here, 4 catches, 72 yards, 1 touchdown.
Yeah, and Dak Prescott. If you waited on Dak Prescott, he's looked pretty darn good.
I was going to ask you, do you guys think he's the best fantasy quarterback this year?
Oh, no, I wouldn't say Dak Prescott is. He had too weak of a first half to say he was number one.
No, but if you look at stats, right, and we can compare Josh Allen, I would say Josh Allen maybe is a little bit better, but Josh Allen's been throwing a lot of interceptions. Mahomes has not had a good fantasy year this year. From statistics, I think Dak Prescott is the best one for fantasy this year.
Yeah, I've been a little frustrated this year because a lot of times for the last 2 or 3 years, Dak Prescott has always been my starting quarterback. I've always waited until the last thing for Dak Prescott. This year, I said to myself, Aaron Rodgers. I'm all in on Aaron Rodgers. So instead of going for Dak Prescott, I started picking up Aaron Rodgers across the board, only for him to be injured. I'm saying, oh my gosh, I should have stuck with my original plan and just keep going with Dak Prescott.
Well, remember, you're right, Jed. Remember the first couple of games, everyone was saying Dak Prescott was done, right? Like there was no offense, and then something changed. I think what they started doing is they were focusing on CeeDee Lamb and the wide receivers versus trying to be a running offense, and that was always what they wanted to do. And he's done well. I mean, 331 yards, 4 touchdowns. He was great.
I think it took them a couple games to get used to not having their offensive coordinator who left, right? So I think that was part of it. But Jalen Hurts, I was going to say, so I was looking at the stats. So Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, at least in the Yahoo scoring leagues, they're 1, 2, and 3. And then you've got Prescott. So he's definitely had a solid year. But yeah, I still wouldn't say he's the best.
Mm-hmm. Now, I would probably say with Dak Prescott, it doesn't hurt that this year's a contract year. So he definitely is vying for that contract.
Yes.
Yeah. So, anyways, hey, by the way, we're what, week 12. We've got a couple more games left until the playoffs. What should people be doing right now? You know, as they're looking at their teams and the remaining of the season, because for a lot of us, trade deadline, I actually forgot trade deadline passed so early. And I'm looking at these things because there's a couple of guys that I wanted to like make trades for, especially in our dynasty league to finish it up.
Yeah,
and the trade deadline's passed.
So I think it depends. If you have locked up your playoff position, then you have the luxury of not worrying about week 13. Most playoffs start week 14 or week 15, depending on your setup. So then if you already locked up a playoff position, you have the luxury of looking ahead to that first round game and playing the matchups for that. So for example, thinking about what defense are you going to start, or are there any players that have a tough matchup and maybe you're going to want to play someone else. So you have the luxury of doing that. On the other hand, if you are 1 or 2 games back of that playoff spot, you just got to sell out, right? Like you got to do whatever you can to get that last playoff spot. As Tommy has, we know over the years, he's won so many leagues sneaking into that last playoff spot and then still making a run to win the championship. So, and what do I mean by selling out is like, you got to go for the home runs, right? Like when you're picking between 2 players, you don't want to pick the safe bet, you want to go for the home run to try to win that matchup.
Yeah. And at least a lot of times that means you got to play Calvin Ridley. He was been terrible recently, but I find when Zay Jones plays, Calvin Ridley does very well. And that means a lot of times even people like Achane, you cannot expect that Achane will do any good here for the next couple of weeks. Aaron Jones will not do any good. And so a lot of times, George Pickens, you may have to bench George Pickens because of the struggles of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But with that said, the Pittsburgh Steelers are changing offensive coordinators. So I am interested in seeing what happens with with the running back over in Pittsburgh. All those guys, Najee Warren, Jaylen Warren, all those guys.
Yeah, no, that's a good call. And I think you're right. It's like you got to pick players who they have a high ceiling, even though one example I think is the Bears. Like Justin Fields and DJ Moore, they're so up and down, but someone like a Moore,
sure.
DJ Moore or Justin Fields, they could go off. Like in one game, all of a sudden they could go off. So those are the guys you got to think about.
I think the other thing that I'm also watching is waiver wires. I've usually found towards the end of the season like this, there are certain people who are just going to dump some players, right? Because they're not doing well. Even from and those people can come in and help you at the last minute, whether they're coming back from IR, like a Justin Jefferson, right? Like this is the ideal time for someone to dump Justin Jefferson, and you can pick up and he might help you in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
The other thing I'm also doing is I'm looking just to see what other players are out there from a dynasty perspective that I should be playing next year, and I want to pick up for next year's fantasy.
Oh, that's a good.
Justin Jefferson did say he was not interested in helping your fantasy team. So he may not be.
I saw that. That was a good one. I just thought it was funny that he even took the effort to say that because it's like, that should be obvious. But I like what you were saying, Jamie. Like that's kind of, to me, the next level of kind of being an advanced fantasy player is if you're in a keeper league, now you're starting to think, okay, who can I actually steal and potentially keep for next year? But also, here's another thing. If you're playing matchups, let's say in 2 weeks, you're going to play whoever in the first round of the playoffs, and that person is weak at quarterback. Let's say they had Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow got knocked out. You don't need a quarterback because you've got your guy. You could actually still go out and take the top 1 or 2 quarterbacks off the waiver wire just to block your opponent from getting that player. That is, you're talking next level fantasy if you can go that far.
Hey, let me ask you both something. So one league, we don't have any trade deadlines, right? And actually, I kind of like this. Do you think that next year we should get rid of trade deadlines?
Personally, I don't. I like to match the NFL as much as possible. The NFL has a trade deadline, so I think we should have trade deadlines. So as to when it is, I don't know if we picked the furthest one available. I'd be fine with that, but I do think you should have a trade deadline. Because think about it. Think about if you were playing someone in the first round of the playoffs, and right before you play them, they make a trade for a blockbuster superstar. You'd be really pissed about that, right? And that wouldn't happen in the real world either.
Yeah.
For our keeper league, for instance, if you look at our waiver wire right now, Njigba is sitting on the waiver wire. You look at someone like him. If you need it, Brandon Cooks is sitting there on the waiver wire. Rashid Rice is sitting there on the waiver wire. Those guys might be potential dynasty, but a lot of times, especially with the emergence of Njigba as well as Brandon Cooks, those are some people that you will look at.
By the way,
at this point, can I say one more thing, Jim? Like, for instance, right now, George Pickens versus Brandon Cooks. Who would you be starting? Would you be starting Brandon Cooks over George Pickens?
Yeah, definitely. Because you're looking for the team that's scoring a lot of points. Pittsburgh has not been putting up a ton of points. The Cowboys have been over 30 points last couple of weeks. So you definitely, that's a good trade-off.
Yeah. I'm not trying to brag, but I really like my dynasty league. I have Eckler, Pollard, McCaffrey, Robinson. And I even have Keegan Mitchell, who is kind of like my guy who I'm just sitting on right now. But I like my dynasty league right now.
Yeah. Hey, for my dynasty I picked up Jaylen Warren. He has been sitting there for a long time. I am reaping the benefits because he is now a dynasty player along with Puka Nacua. So those are the two guys heading into the offseason that I'm very happy about.
Well, you also have CeeDee Lamb has been doing really well for you. Jalen Hurts is doing well, right? And then you can also decide if you want to keep an Achane or James Cook, depending on how they do the next. I mean, you're second place in the league, so your team is actually not bad.
Yeah, Javonte Williams is sitting there. A lot of times he's doing well. Devontae Adams, and then sitting there in my last spot, Adam Thielen. Especially for Carolina, who has no one to throw to, Adam Thielen becomes it.
Yeah.
And for me, this is the year I had to move on from. You guys know I had both Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook for like many years. This is the year I finally moved on from Dalvin Cook. This is probably Derrick Henry's last year for me, and it's going to switch over to Tyreek Hill and Tua. Those are kind of be my bedrocks. And then I've got Addison, I've got Ayuk, but I need to find a new running back, because if not for Gus Edwards this year, I'd be getting killed. But Gus Edwards has been carrying me the past couple of weeks.
Hey, speaking of a Cook family, James Cook, right? He's been a disappointment. Do you feel like he just is not what we thought he would be, and we're just not going to go with him?
Yeah, exactly. No, that's not a guy that I'm rolling the dice on. We've given him plenty of chances. He's had plenty of chances to show, and basically he is what he is, which is essentially an RB2. He's not an RB1.
Here's my only argument against that, right? Because last week he was projected to score 9 fantasy points. He ended up scoring 17 fantasy points, changing the offensive coordinator. They ran the ball more. Just to relieve some pressure for Josh Allen. He's one of those guys I'm watching these next few weeks just to see what he's going to do, because if he keeps up the production, for me, it's the system and not the player. The only concerning thing about a James Cook is he does fumble a lot. And the question is, do you want to keep a person like that, or are there other players that you want to keep? Like for Tommy, do you want to keep an Achane? Are you going to choose an Achane over a James Cook, right? And so those are.
I would keep Achane over Cook for sure. I mean, to me, if you're talking about playing for the playoffs, I agree with you. Go with the hot hand, go with the system. But if you're talking about keeper league, no, you want to go with the rookies or the second year, third year players, and the ones who have high ceilings. And Achane could be a superstar if he's healthy next year.
Let me ask you: would you keep a Jaylen Warren over a James Cook?
Well, yeah.
At this point, I would. Yeah, I think Warren is going to be the clear starter next year. You're hoping that Pittsburgh progresses and kind of gets back their offense, and then he would be the bedrock on the running back side.
Yeah. One player who I'm really watching that I have high hopes for is, I hope it'll pan out, Keaton Mitchell over at the Baltimore Ravens.
Mm-hmm.
Because Jimmy and I are in this 14-team league. I traded Brandon Ayuk over to Jimmy because I said, I have Aaron Jones. I need another running back, Keaton Mitchell. Well, Aaron Jones goes out. Keaton Mitchell continues to really suck it up to Gus Edwards. And so far, he has not helped me out at all.
Jet, I'll tell you this. I mean, you've always talked about Ayuk, and I was like, every year I pass by an Ayuk because I was like, whatever, I can find somebody else. Ayuk's a pretty good fantasy wide receiver. He scores some good points for you.
As long as Brock Purdy is playing, Ayuk is your guy. As long as Purdy is playing.
Yeah. So my saving grace toward that trade is I got Jalen Hurts and Keaton Mitchell for Brandon Ayuk. So at least I got Jalen Hurts going to the playoffs.
Yeah. Oh, Hurts has been great too. That was a good pickup.
Tom, are you keeping Jalen Hurts in your dynasty next year? I would imagine yes. Right?
Yeah, all day. Yeah, I love Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts.
I don't like quarterbacks, but I will keep Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback. I was thinking about even Josh Allen tosses so many interceptions. Jalen Hurts is good. He can use his legs. He can score touchdowns on the ground.
Well, here's the crazy thing. If the NFL outlaws the tush push, what does that do to Jalen Hurts? Because part of the reason Jalen Hurts is so valuable is because he gets those goal line touchdown runs, right? So what happens to his touchdown total? It probably comes down if that gets eliminated.
Yeah.
Jet, let me ask you a quick question for those who are listening who don't understand what tush push is. How would you describe it?
Yeah, so basically it's a play. If you guys have been watching the Philadelphia Eagles, anytime there is a 4th and 1 or just a 1-yard situation, they run what's called the tush push, which is basically they took it from rugby football. And so they line up in a way where Jalen Hurts takes the ball and he does like a normal quarterback sneak, but he's got two guys behind him who then push him as he's going in, and it's become unstoppable. Now, I give credit to the Eagles. I hope that the NFL does not outlaw it, because they actually went and studied Australian rules football to better understand how to do this, because in Australian rules football you have that initial push where they do the same things, and so I give them credit that they figured out how to do it within the rules, and so I don't think we should take it away, but it's become unstoppable. If you look at the 4th and 1 situations for Philadelphia Eagles, I believe they have 100% success rate, and so just think about that. It's a really huge.
But there are
advantage.
some quarterbacks, like for instance, like Mahomes, you never see them doing something like this, right? Like, who is it? Like the last game that I saw, they brought in a backup, to do something like that because they did not want their starter getting himself potentially injured because of that play.
Yeah, basically the quarterback and the center. So the center for Philadelphia Eagles, Jason, is Kelsey, right? Travis Kelsey's brother. He talks about those two guys basically are at the bottom of this huge pileup of 300, 400-pound men. So it's definitely a situation where you.
I didn't know they studied Australian football to figure that out. Yeah.
On Friday's episode of NFL, what do you call it? What's the one in the afternoon? Whatever. NFL Live, right? Rex Ryan and Teddy Bruschi showed how you could combat the tush push. And one of the things that Rex Ryan says is that a lot of times the NFL defensive linemen have a 3-point stance. You literally have to have a 5-point stance and flat on the ground to get more leverage to push against these guys. So a simple thing from 3 fingers to just 5 fingers on the ground and the palm on your ground will really be able to help with that.
Yeah, Kelsey talked about that. For him at that center position, the key is to get low. Like he has to get beneath the guy in front of him, and then that's what allows them to get the leverage. So you're right. I think if they went from a 3-point to flat, it feels like they're basically just fighting. It's amazing if you think about it, right? Like they're fighting within inches of one another to see who can just get that couple inch, advantage. It's really pretty amazing.
Not that we're talking about offensive linemen, but I was listening to the ESPN show here on the radio. And Tom Thayer, who used to be an offensive lineman for the Bears, he was saying that most offensive linemen today are taught to play the 2-point stance where they're high now, right? Versus the 3-point stance where they're a lot lower. And he says that's the problem. If you look at the really, really good offensive lines in the NFL, most of them are still at the 3-point stance, because when you start off higher versus lower, you're allowing these defensive guys to get past you. And he's like, I don't understand why they keep doing that.
Anyways. Jim, if we talk about waiver wire, one of my favorite players in the world, Shaq Leonard, Darius Leonard, got cut by the Indianapolis Colts. He's sitting there on the waiver wire. I doubt if he's going to come to the Bears, but I was very surprised, especially with that neck injury. They cut him because I thought he was still a decent player.
Well, I was wondering if nobody picked him up. That I was thinking the exact same thing.
Wow, I'm surprised. You would think that by now he would have passed somebody would pick them up on waivers, but maybe somebody doesn't want to pay him that much money. But I would love the Bears to pick him up.
By the way, talking about the Colts, if you have Michael Pittman or if you have Jonathan Taylor, Pittman has really been solid. I know he doesn't have the touchdowns all the time, but his receiving totals have been really strong. He's been approaching 10 catches a game consistently for really the past 4 or 5 weeks. So I don't know. That's one of the players I kind of was not sure at the beginning of the season, but he's panned out pretty well.
Well, it's the last couple of weeks. Josh Downs should be back this week, but Josh Downs has been out with a neck injury. And so I think they've relied so much more on Pittman because of that. Here's another player that people are looking at, and I don't know what you guys think about him. Marquise Brown is most likely not going to play for Arizona. Trey McBride, the tight end for Arizona, may potentially be the number 1 receiver for the Cardinals. Are you guys high on the Trey McBride?
No. None. I'm not
Really?
even looking at anyone in Arizona. I don't know. I'm just
no. Okay, here's my thing. Here's why I'm watching them. There's no tight ends in the NFL, right? Like if you look at we got Sam Laporta, we got Travis Kelce, we got Mark Andrews. Trey McBride, depending on how he does these next few weeks, he's going to be a late round next year that you might want to pick up, that you might want to stash, because he could actually become a pretty decent option for somebody's fantasy league.
Yeah, but wouldn't you look more at Isaiah Likely versus Trey McBride?
No. I mean, think about it. The last time Isaiah Likely was a starting tight end, he didn't do anything. He had 2 games where he played for Mark Andrews, and the only reason is I picked him up, and I thought he was going to do great. Didn't do anything. Trey McBride, if you look at here, let me look the last couple of games. He's the last 4 games, 21 points, 4 points, 17 points, 7 points, right? And I actually think, especially this week without Marquise Brown, I'm paying attention to him only because, he's somebody who you want to watch for next year.
Yeah. Another person, a lot of times, if you're needing a tight end, Taysom Hill. Take a look at Taysom Hill. He's one of those guys that we've been talking about. He could get you. He's either feast or famine. And so he may have a very good game that elevates you to the playoffs.
So you were saying you don't like Likely? Is that what you were saying, Jimmy?
No, I'm not a big Likely fan.
Yeah, so I'm starting him in our league, and I was just looking at it. I could get Njoku or Pitts over him as a starter. That's kind of an interesting one. I had Pat Freiermuth and decided to go with Likely over that because I just felt like Baltimore's wide receiving offense has been coming around. So that's interesting.
Jed, look how Kyle Pitts has fallen so much, right? Because right now you could pick up a Kyle Pitts and you decide to pick up an Isaiah Likely instead.
Yeah, exactly.
Tom, what do you think about now that Burrows is out for Cincinnati? Are you liking Jamar Chase or any of these players on the Bengals?
I don't know. I do a lot of times we haven't seen this quarterback. No one knows who this quarterback is. Look, he could be as good as DeVito is with the New York Giants. I don't know, but I think I would probably give it. But I wouldn't be. I'll still play Chase, but I'm not expecting very much from the rest of the team.
Yeah.
You got me second guessing myself, Jimmy. Now I'm debating Pitts. Like, man, they mentioned play Pitts.
You know what? I'm just not a Likely fan. I think I've seen, and maybe I'm wrong, but right now, I think a Trey McBride, who's going to be your number 1 tight end, or number 1 receiver potentially for the Cardinals, is going to be better than an Isaiah Likely. Likely's got, now that Mark Andrews is out, I think Lamar's going to end up throwing to his wide receivers, and he's going to target his running backs. That's what my thoughts are.
Yeah, the one thing is they're playing the Chargers. So I'm looking at the matchups. If you're in the situation where you're trying to debate between 2 guys, you want to look at the matchups. And so Baltimore's playing the Chargers, and the Chargers
have a bad defense. They stink at defense.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what's kind of leaning me towards. But Pitts is playing New Orleans, so there's going to be a lot of points there too. So I don't know. It's a tough call. We'll have to see.
Yeah.
And then also, who's coming back this week? Kyren Williams is coming back for the LA Rams. So I'm very excited. He's been gone for about 4 or 5 weeks. Kyren Williams, I was hoping to get Kyren Williams and Achane for the playoff run, but Achane's out, and Kyren Williams, I'm hoping will do well.
Yeah. I feel bad that they just dumped Darrell Henderson. He was there for a few weeks, and now they just dumped him. All right. Hey, we've got 6 minutes before we all got to go. Let's run through a couple of games. Dolphins versus Jets. Today is the first Black Friday afternoon game, which I'm kind of excited about.
Yeah, me too. Smart move.
Yeah. Zach Wilson. Are you guys surprised Zach Wilson is now the number 3 quarterback for the Jets?
Not surprised. Yeah, I think he's been that the whole season, actually. So
yeah. The only thing I'm looking for the New York Jets, and I was trying to figure out if I should keep it. Greg Zuerlein is my football kicker. A lot of times he does do pretty well. So I was trying to figure out: do I go with him? Do I go with Santos with the Bears against Minnesota? That actually, because without Zach Wilson, you still have Breece Hall, you still have Garrett Wilson. They may get a lot, but it's a Vic Fangio defense that they're playing against. So I actually was sitting there trying to figure out which kicker to use.
Yeah, that's not a bad call. The issue, and also remember, the Jets defense is still pretty good. So I'm actually I'm still playing, you're not going to sit Tyreek Hill, but he's going up against, that cornerback in New York. That's a tough matchup. Exactly. Sauce Gardner, that's a tough matchup. So I wouldn't be surprised if the defense still scores a few points. And then if they do, you're right. If a couple field goals here and there might come in.
I'm hoping that now that they have a change in quarterback, they're going to target Garrett Wilson a little bit more, lean on their superstars, right? The Brees Halls of the world, the Garrett Wilsons. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen. I think honestly they're just biding time for Aaron Rodgers to potentially come back. If they can win a couple games, then you'll see Rodgers come back in a few weeks.
Well, supposedly, yeah, he's going to start practicing again, right? He said December 5th he's going to start
practicing. Yeah, that's what he says. So that's why I was like, all they're doing is trying to get a couple of games, get into the playoffs so that he can come back as well too. So let's see. There's some duds out there this week, like Patriots versus Giants. That's not going to be fun. Steelers versus Bengals. That's not going to be fun. Panthers versus Titans. All of these games are boring. Here's one. Bills versus Eagles. You guys think Bills have not been doing well? Do you think that Eagles are going to be able to beat the Bills this week?
Yeah, I would take the Eagles in that game. I'd also say that I think the Bengals-Steelers game could be interesting because it's a division game, right? Even though you don't have Joe Burrows anymore, anytime you have division games, it's always like a battle, and so that could be a good game. But no, I still like Hurts. I think the Bills are still struggling a bit, trying to figure out like who they really want to be, and so I'm taking the Eagles in that one.
Yeah.
I actually, Jed, will predict the upset with the Bills because they just fired Ken Dorsey. And so a lot of times, who knows? They may go back to what worked for those guys. And if you could sit there and target Stephon Diggs and have Josh Allen do some more running, actually, I think a lot of times they're maybe upset with the Philadelphia Eagles.
You know, I agree with Tommy because I've been reading a lot of Bills football news just to kind of see what's happened. And they did say Dorsey has changed the offense this year so that they're trying to limit how much Josh Allen runs. But as a result, he's been trying to push the ball down and throwing these interceptions. So I think they're going to try to go back to what they did last year, which was really successful for them.
That's a good tip.
Yeah. So, hey, I mean, look, you want to pay attention to some of these things, right? Like even Broncos. What do you guys think? Broncos have actually Courtland Sutton the last couple of weeks have scored a touchdown. He's been pretty good as a wide receiver.
Yeah, but the problem is the Cleveland defense is really good. That's the one thing a lot of times. So I see more of a Javonte Williams more than Courtland Sutton throwing the air because Cleveland is very, very good.
Yeah, Cleveland's been a top 5 defense as bad as their offense have been. I've been using them in a couple different leagues. So, yeah, I agree with that. But the Broncos, I've been wrong. You know, I thought I would not play, and I haven't played any Broncos players. But the last few weeks, they've been pretty strong.
Browns have been good, too. They're 7-3. They're slated to go into the playoffs. Who knew, you know? Yes. And Deshaun Watson's out for the year as well, too. Yeah.
Hey, last question for me on my end as well, too. Caleb Williams really struggled in his last couple of games. Do you think people are as high as Caleb Williams, or his leadership, especially when they've been losing, has really affected the perception of Caleb Williams?
Hey, I like the guy out of Oregon, Bo Nix.
True names.
Yeah. No, it's the Nix, right? Isn't Oregon State, right? Who's the Nix? The Bo Nix guy is at Washington.
I don't know.
Yeah. I like the Bo Nix quarterback. I would take him over Caleb Williams. But yeah, I agree. Williams actually that whole system, USC has really been hurting, which for me has been a fun thing to see because the coach used to be the Sooners quarterback. Coach.
So here's the question for you guys as we're finishing up. Are you going to be happy if they kept Justin Fields and drafted Marvin Harrison?
Oh yeah,
Marvin
definitely.
Harrison.
Really? Yes. Instead of Caleb Williams?
Well, and if they fire the coach, as long as they get rid of Eberflus
and go after Harbaugh.
Yeah, just change the offensive system. So
I don't know if the rumors are true out of Chicago, but they're saying that they might fire both the coach and the general manager and just bring in a new group of people.
Yeah, that's always tough because when you get a new group, then they usually aren't going to buy into it. Justin Fields will probably move on from him, so that's tough.
Yeah. But I want Justin Fields sitting there, and I want Marvin Harrison Jr., and then from that point on, go get yourself another offensive line or a sack guy, defensive line guy.
So you're potentially okay about missing out on a quarterback?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Especially these days, it feels like you can get a quarterback later and still be okay. I mean, look at C.J. Stroud. What did he drop to? He was like 10 or 11.
Yeah. And the Brock Purdy, a lot of times you could get someone like that as well too. Now, I mean, look, Mac Jones stinks, so I mean they picked him pretty high.
Yeah.
Remember,
Hey,
the Bears could have drafted a CJ Stroud this year, and they
Oh,
passed
man.
up on him for an offensive lineman.
Stroud
And
has
I think
looked
they're
so
kicking
good.
themselves right now.
Yeah, Stroud has looked really good. But all these things you just got to wait and see, because basically all the defenses will adjust to Stroud next year too.
Yeah.
They haven't had a full season to do that, so you got to wait. I've got one basketball thing for you guys in our basketball league. See if you guys would have made this trade. I've been trying to get. I don't know which team that is that has Chet Holmgren. I've been trying to get Chet Holmgren.
Tom, I think he's frozen. But
Yeah, he's probably trying to get Chet Holmgren as well too. I bet you it's that same league where Matthew has Chet Holmgren, so he wants Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren.
oh yeah, I could see him wanting that. So, all right, sounds good. We'll turn it off. Next week we'll get back together again.
All right, see ya.